In a world where trust is shattered and survival is the only option, a young boy and his sister find themselves abandoned, with nowhere to turn. Left alone in the cold, dark streets, their lives hanging by a thread, they are forced to face a reality that no child should ever have to endure. But when a stranger steps into their lives offering hope, can they trust him? Or is it another trap in a world that has already broken them? This is their journey, their fight for survival, and the heartbreaking truths they must face. Watch until the end to see if they can truly find peace in a world that has forgotten them. You won't believe what happens next. If you felt the depth of the story and want to be part of their journey, make sure to subscribe. Stay with us through every twist, turn, and emotional moment. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Subscribe now and be a part of the story that will leave you changed. A boy sat alone on a cold, metal bench at the bus stop. His small hands tightly clutched a faded, worn-out backpack. The night air was thick with the scent of rain, damp concrete, and distant car exhaust. He looked at the empty road ahead, his eyes wide and filled with a quiet panic. Beside him, his sister slept, curled into a ball, her face soft and peaceful, untouched by the harshness of the world. Her light breathing was the only sound in the otherwise still night. She had no idea what was going on. She never did. The boy shifted uncomfortably on the bench, trying to ignore the chill creeping into his bones. He looked around. The bus stop was eerily quiet. The faint glow of a streetlight cast long shadows on the cracked pavement. The city felt empty, as if everyone had forgotten about this place, forgotten about them. His stomach rumbled, but he could not remember the last time he had eaten. There was no money, no food, no warmth. Just the cold of the night and the heavy weight of fear. He glanced down at his sister again. Her brown hair spread out like a fan against her jacket. The comfort of her closeness was all he had left. He had promised to protect her, to take care of her no matter what. But he was just a boy. What could he do? Their father had left them hours ago. The argument had been loud, angry. The boy remembered how his father's voice had cracked as he shouted at their mother. The words were sharp, cutting through the silence of their home. And then, without another word, their father had walked out the door. They never saw him again. Not after that. The boy tried to push the memory away. His eyes stung with tears he refused to shed. He couldn't cry, not now, not in front of his sister. He had to be strong. He had to pretend everything would be okay. But the truth gnawed at him, a truth he couldn't escape. His father had abandoned them.
And he didn't know why.
The boy didn't understand the reason, only that it was something unbearable, something that had broken their family apart. And now, they were left here, alone at this bus stop, in a world that seemed to have forgotten them. A car passed by, its headlights briefly illuminating their faces. The boy blinked, feeling the coldness of the night seeping deeper into his skin. A shiver ran down his spine, but it wasn't from the cold. It was something else, something darker. He held his sister tighter, as if that could shield her from the world. The sound of a distant horn echoed in the air. He glanced up, eyes scanning the empty road again, hoping for something, anything, to change. But nothing did. The world remained silent, indifferent. He closed his eyes, trying to block out the fear. But then, in the stillness, he heard something. A soft rustle. A figure appeared in the distance. At first, he thought it was a person, someone coming to help. But as the figure drew closer, he realized it wasn't. It was something worse. The boy's heart began to race. He gripped his sister tighter, his mind racing with thoughts of what to do. He couldn't let this happen. Not after everything. Not after their father's abandonment.
Not now.
The figure moved closer, the sound of footsteps growing louder. The boy's breath quickened. His sister stirred slightly in her sleep, but she didn't wake. The figure stopped in front of them. The boy froze, not daring to move. A chill ran through him. The figure stood in front of them, motionless. The boy's heart hammered in his chest. His hands trembled as he held his sister, afraid that if he let go, something terrible would happen. His mind raced, but all he could think about was her, his little sister, still sleeping so peacefully. How could she sleep through this? Did she feel the danger too? Was she as scared as he was? Was she even aware of what had happened to them? What had become of their lives in just a matter of hours? The figure took a step forward, breaking the silence, and the boy instinctively pulled his sister closer. His breath came in shallow, quick gasps, as if the very air around him was pressing in. His instinct screamed at him to run, to grab his sister and disappear into the night, but there was nowhere to go. Nowhere safe. Nowhere to hide from the world that had left them behind. From the father who had walked out without a second glance, leaving them to fend for themselves. The figure's face was obscured in shadow, but there was something unnerving about the way it stood still, unmoving. The boy couldn't see its eyes, but he could feel them. Heavy, watching, judging. He wanted to scream, but his voice was caught in his throat. The air felt thick with tension, with uncertainty, and with the heavy weight of abandonment. For a moment, the boy dared to look away from the figure. His eyes flickered toward the dark street, searching for something, anything, that could bring him some sense of hope. But there was nothing. Just empty streets, silent buildings, the occasional flicker of a streetlight in the distance. The boy turned back to the figure, his stomach twisting with dread. And then the figure spoke. "Are you alone?" The voice was low, gravelly, with a hint of something unrecognizable, something cold. The boy froze. The word struck him like a slap in the face. Was he alone? Was he? The answer seemed simple, yet the question felt like a punch to the gut. Of course, he wasn't alone. He had his sister. But who else was left for them now? Who else cared? Who else was there to protect them, to guide them? The figure stepped forward again, closer this time. The boy could feel his heart beating louder, his pulse racing faster. He wanted to shout, to push the figure away, but something inside him told him to remain still. To wait.
To watch.
The boy's hand tightened around his sister, his fingers digging into her shoulder. He could feel the warmth of her body, the soft rise and fall of her chest with each breath she took. She was still unaware of everything happening around her. But soon, the boy knew, that would change. Soon, she would wake, and the reality of their situation would hit her. He only hoped she would be strong enough to understand, strong enough to survive what was coming. The figure was now standing right in front of them, so close that the boy could hear its uneven breathing. He held his breath, trying not to make a sound. Everything around him seemed to blur, the world becoming a faint, distant noise. His entire focus was on the figure, on the strange presence before him. "Do you need help?" The figure's voice was almost mocking, like it found amusement in the boy's fear. The boy's chest tightened. No, they didn't need help. They needed their father back. They needed someone to care. They needed to be safe again. But those things were gone. Gone forever. No one cared. The figure leaned closer, so close that the boy could smell the stale scent of tobacco and something darker, like sweat and old leather. The boy's body tensed as the figure's hand reached out, brushing a strand of hair from his sister's face. The boy instinctively pulled her closer, his eyes wide with terror. His sister stirred, but she didn't wake. She just shifted, murmuring something unintelligible in her sleep. The figure straightened up, its face still hidden in shadow.
For a long moment it said nothing.
The boy's breath was shallow, his heart beating so loudly that he thought it would explode from his chest. And then, finally, the figure spoke again. "Where will you go?" The words cut through the air, thick with threat. The boy's mind was racing, panic seizing every part of him. Where would they go? What would they do? How could they survive this world alone, abandoned by their own father? How could they trust anyone now? The boy didn't have an answer. There was no answer. No place left for them to go. No one left to help. His sister stirred again, her eyes fluttering open. The boy's heart skipped a beat as he looked down at her. She blinked, her vision blurry, as she tried to make sense of the darkness around them. For a moment, she looked confused, dazed, like she didn't quite know where she was or why she felt so uncomfortable. And then, her eyes locked onto the boy's face. She smiled weakly, as if nothing in the world could be wrong. But the boy saw the fear in her eyes, the unease that was growing there. She could feel it, too, the weight of their situation. The figure moved again, and the boy's body stiffened. It was only a few feet away now, so close he could hear the faintest rasp of its breath. It was watching them, studying them, waiting for something. The boy's heart clenched, a terrible realization dawning on him. This was it. This was the moment everything would change. With a sudden movement, the figure reached down, grabbing the boy's arm. The boy's body jerked in surprise, his breath catching in his throat. He wanted to scream, to run, but his legs wouldn't move. He was frozen, trapped in the figure's grip. His sister, still too sleepy to understand, stirred, but did not wake. "Let go," the boy shouted, his voice cracking. But the figure's grip only tightened. "Not yet," it murmured, its voice sending a shiver down his spine. And then, in a flash of realization, the boy understood. This was no stranger. This was no one to fear. This was the one person he had hoped for, the one person who had left them behind. His father had returned. And in that moment, the boy felt a mix of rage, heartbreak, and betrayal flood through him. He had waited for this day, for this moment, to finally see his father again. But now that he did, he realized something else. His father had come back only to break him even more. The boy's heart pounded as the figure's grip tightened, pulling him closer. He felt the weight of the past hours, the betrayal, the uncertainty, crashing down on him all at once. His father, his flesh and blood, stood before him, but there was no warmth, no safety in the touch that now held him. The boy's mind raced.
How could this be?
His father had left them, abandoned them with nothing, leaving only the cold, empty streets to swallow them whole. And now, after everything, after the fear and pain of being alone in the world, he was here, standing right in front of him, as though nothing had happened, as though he hadn't just shattered the very foundation of their lives. The boy struggled against the figure's hold, his chest tight with emotion, but his father didn't let go. "You're really back?" the boy gasped, his voice breaking. "After all this time, you just come back and expect everything to be okay?" His father's face remained hidden in the darkness, his presence looming, unreadable. For a moment, everything stood still. The night, the cold, even the faint breeze that stirred the leaves in the trees. The only sound was the soft, rhythmic breathing of the boy's sister, still oblivious to the storm unfolding around her. The figure finally spoke, but his voice was not the one the boy remembered. It was colder, emptier, like something had withered inside him long ago. "I'm here because you need me," the father murmured, as though this made sense. "I've always been here, just not in the way you thought." The boy recoiled. His breath hitched, a knot of confusion and anger tying itself tightly in his chest.
"What do you mean by that?"
The words were like daggers, each one punctuating his disbelief. The figure's hand loosened on his arm, just slightly, but it was enough for the boy to pull away, heart racing. He took a small step back, his eyes darting between his father and his sister. She was still asleep, blissfully unaware of the nightmare unfolding before them. She deserved to remain asleep, to be sheltered from the cruelty of the world for as long as possible. "You left us. You abandoned us, and now you just show up? No explanations, no apology? What do you want from us?" The boy's voice trembled, each word filled with the years of pain he had carried on his shoulders, the weight of betrayal that had never been acknowledged, never even spoken of. His father didn't move, but the air between them grew heavier. The silence stretched like a tightrope, ready to snap at any moment. The boy's heart beat erratically, too fast, as though it were fighting to break free from his chest. His throat tightened, making it harder to breathe, harder to think. "You think I wanted to leave you?" The voice was soft, but with an edge, like it had been dulled by regret or resentment. "You think it was easy? You think I didn't feel it every single day? I had no choice." The boy's chest tightened at the words. His father's words, so hollow, so distant. "You had no choice," he spat. "You left us, and you couldn't even look back. You couldn't even fight for us, for me, for her. You just left." His father's head lowered slightly, as if the accusation had struck a painful chord. "It wasn't like that," he whispered, but the boy could see the flicker of shame, the flicker of a man who knew he could never make things right. "But it was," the boy shouted, his voice breaking with raw emotion. "You think I don't remember? You think I don't remember how you walked out that door, how you didn't even turn back? How you didn't care?" Tears filled the boy's eyes, but he wiped them away quickly, too proud to let them fall. The boy had spent so many nights in silence, keeping the pain locked inside, not allowing it to break through, afraid of what would happen if it did. But now it felt as if the dam had burst, and all the anger, all the hurt, was pouring out, crashing through him in waves. His father stood there, unmoving, his expression unreadable in the darkness. The boy took another step back, his gaze never leaving the man who had once been his world. "Do you even realize what you've done to us?" the boy asked, his voice quieter now, but the hurt in it was sharper than ever. "You don't know what it's like to wake up every day, wondering why you're not good enough. To watch the world pass by, feeling like you're invisible, like no one cares. I had to grow up so fast. I had to learn to survive without you. And now, after all this time, you think you can just show up and fix it? You can't fix this." The boy's chest heaved as he spoke, the weight of the words sinking deep into his soul. His father's face was still hidden, but the boy could feel the shift in the air. Something had changed. Something had broken. His father finally took a step forward, but this time, it wasn't to grab him. It was to kneel, to lower himself to the boy's level, as if trying to reach him, to bridge the chasm between them. The boy recoiled. He didn't want to look at him, didn't want to hear the words that he was sure would be empty, that would only make everything worse. He wanted to scream, to run, to get as far away from this nightmare as possible. But then, the father spoke, his voice quieter now, raw with emotion. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to leave you. But there were things you wouldn't understand. Things I couldn't control." The boy shook his head, tears blurring his vision. "You think I want to hear excuses?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "Do you think I need to hear why you left us? You left me, and you left her. And now here we are. Alone. Again." For a moment, there was only silence. The boy's heart ached, his body trembling with a mixture of fear, sorrow, and rage. His mind spun, unable to find a place for this sudden turn of events, unable to fit the man in front of him into the world he had created in his mind. And then his sister stirred again, this time more awake. She rubbed her eyes sleepily, not yet fully aware of what had happened, but sensing the shift in the air, sensing the tension. Her little hand reached out for the boy, and the moment her fingers touched his, the boy felt a pang of guilt, a crushing weight of responsibility. She was all he had left. He couldn't let her see this. He couldn't let her feel the pain he had been carrying all these years. "Please just go," the boy whispered, his voice breaking. "Please leave us. I can't do this. I can't be hurt by you again." His father's eyes flickered, the briefest flash of something, maybe regret, maybe guilt, crossing his face. But then it was gone, like a shadow in the night, slipping away, leaving the boy standing there, heartbroken, betrayed once more. And with that, his father turned and walked away. The boy didn't look after him. Instead, he looked down at his sister, still half asleep in his arms. Her innocent face was the only thing that mattered now. The boy held her tightly, silently vowing to never let her face the same pain he had. She would never have to know the emptiness of abandonment. She would never have to feel the sting of betrayal. They were alone now. But maybe, just maybe, they could still find a way to survive. Together. The boy stood there, the weight of his father's departure pressing down on him like a 1,000-pound stone. He wanted to move, to take his sister and run from this place, but his legs felt like lead. The cold air bit at his skin, but it was nothing compared to the coldness that had settled in his chest. His father was gone. The words repeated in his mind, each one more painful than the last.
Gone.
Left them to fend for themselves in a world that had no mercy, no kindness, no room for mistakes. The boy clenched his fists, fighting against the tears that threatened to spill. He couldn't break down now. Not in front of his sister. He turned to look at her. Her small face was still soft with sleep, her cheeks flushed from the warmth of the blanket she had wrapped herself in. Her tiny hand gripped his sleeve, as if seeking comfort, seeking a connection to him. She hadn't asked questions, hadn't yet asked where their father was, why they were here at this bus stop, or why everything felt so wrong. But she would. One day, she would grow up and she would remember this night. She would remember how her father had disappeared, how they had been abandoned in the cold night without any answers. She would want to know why their world had fallen apart. And when that time came, the boy didn't know what he would say. What could he say to her? Don't worry, everything's going to be fine?
No.
He couldn't lie to her. The boy's throat tightened as the weight of their reality settled over him. He felt as though he were drowning. His chest felt heavy, his breath shallow. He squeezed his sister's hand tighter, the only thing that kept him grounded. But even as he held her, a sinking feeling clawed at his insides. He wasn't sure how much longer he could protect her. He wasn't sure how much longer he could keep them both afloat in a world that seemed determined to drown them. The boy's mind raced. The world was too big, too cold. They had nothing. No money, no family, no home. Just the clothes on their backs and each other. The city felt like a maze, a labyrinth of concrete and steel, with no way out. The boy's eyes darted around, trying to find something, anything, that could give him hope. But the streets were empty. The buildings around them were silent. The world had forgotten them, as if they were invisible, as if they didn't exist. A sharp pain pierced his chest, and for the first time in a long while, he felt small, helpless. It was a feeling he hadn't allowed himself to experience in years. He had always been the strong one, the protector, the one who had to keep it all together. But now he felt as if he were falling apart, piece by piece. His sister shifted in his arms, murmuring softly in her sleep. Her innocent face, so trusting and unaware, only deepened the ache in his heart. She deserved better than this. She deserved a world full of love, full of safety, full of security. Not this cold, empty wasteland of abandonment. The boy's mind began to spiral. He had failed her. He had promised her that everything would be okay. He had promised that he would protect her, keep her safe. But now he didn't know how. He looked down at his sister again, her small face lit by the flickering street lamp overhead. The softness of her features made him feel even more desperate. He had to be strong. For her. He had to be the rock she could lean on, the person who would always be there to lift her up. He couldn't fail her. But how? His thoughts were interrupted by a distant sound. The soft rumble of an engine, the low hum of a vehicle approaching in the distance. The boy's heart skipped a beat. He glanced around, his eyes scanning the empty street. His pulse quickened as the headlights of a car appeared, cutting through the darkness. The car slowly pulled up to the bus stop, its engine purring as it came to a stop just a few feet away from them. The boy's first instinct was to grab his sister and run, but then he froze. The windows of the car were tinted, and he couldn't make out the driver's face. The air was thick with tension. Who could it be? The car sat there for what felt like an eternity, the soft hum of the engine the only sound in the night. The boy's heart raced, his mind spiraling again. What if it was someone dangerous? What if it was someone who wanted to hurt them? He swallowed hard, his throat dry. He wanted to move, to take his sister and flee, but his legs felt like they were rooted to the ground. He had to protect her. He had to stay calm. The figure in the car made no move to get out. A few seconds passed, then a few more. Finally, the window rolled down, and a voice called out, breaking the silence. "Are you two okay?" The voice was low, but there was a kind tone to it. The boy stiffened, not knowing whether to trust it, not knowing if this was just another person who would take advantage of their vulnerability. The boy's eyes darted to the car. He couldn't tell if the person meant any harm. The question echoed in his mind. "Are you two okay? Am I okay?" His world was crumbling. He wasn't okay. But what did this stranger want from him? His sister stirred again, her eyes slowly opening, her small hands rubbing her face. She looked up at him, her brow furrowing as she tried to make sense of the situation. Her innocent eyes searched his face, and for a moment, he felt like he was about to break in front of her. "Who's that?" she asked softly, her voice quiet, still groggy from sleep. The boy's heart twisted. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know if he could protect her from the world anymore. He had failed her in so many ways already. The car window lowered further, revealing a pair of soft eyes, kind and warm, but still guarded. The person inside the car, whoever they were, wasn't a threat. They weren't aggressive or demanding. But that didn't mean they could help them. The boy swallowed hard, his voice trembling as he finally spoke. "We're fine. We don't need anything." The words left his mouth, but he immediately regretted them.
He didn't know why he had said that.
The truth was they were far from fine. He could feel the weight of the world pressing down on him, the weight of their abandonment, the fear of the future, the uncertainty of where they would go. The stranger in the car didn't respond right away, but the silence that followed seemed to stretch on forever. The boy looked at the car, then at his sister, her eyes now fully open, her face filled with confusion. But there was no answer. And in that silence, the boy realized something. There were no more answers. There were no more promises. It was just him and her. And whatever the world had in store for them, they would face it together. The silence between them and the stranger in the car grew unbearable. The boy's mind raced, thoughts spiraling with uncertainty and fear. His sister, still too young to fully understand the gravity of their situation, looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes. She had no idea of the storm raging inside him, no clue of the terror that gripped his heart. She only knew that the world, for now, was quiet, and in that moment, it was as if nothing had changed. But he knew better. The stranger didn't move. They sat there, waiting for something, perhaps an invitation, perhaps a refusal. The boy's grip on his sister's hand tightened. He didn't know what to do. Should they run? Should they hide? Should they trust the stranger, or should they keep running, keep moving through the night? He glanced at the car again, at the mysterious figure inside. His instincts screamed at him to be cautious. He had learned to trust no one, to rely only on himself. But the voice, the kindness in it, unsettled him. He had never heard such warmth in someone's words in so long. The car's engine hummed softly in the background, as though time itself had slowed down. Every second felt like an eternity, the air thick with tension. His heart beat louder in his chest, each pulse a reminder of how alone they were. No one cared. His father had left them. They were abandoned, nothing more than shadows in a world too cold for children to survive in. But as he looked down at his sister, so small and vulnerable, a spark of something else flickered deep inside him. He couldn't afford to be paralyzed by fear. Not anymore. He couldn't let his sister see his weakness, the rawness of his pain. He had to be her rock, her protector, even when the world had turned its back on them. And then, as if sensing his inner conflict, the stranger spoke again, this time softer, more tentative. "I can help you," they said, the words tinged with something the boy couldn't quite place. A promise, or perhaps a lie. He wasn't sure. The boy's breath caught in his throat. Help. What kind of help could a stranger offer? What did they expect in return? His mind spun with possibilities, all of them dark, all of them dangerous. His heart told him to trust no one, to keep his sister safe at all costs. But his mind, the part of him that had always been pragmatic, that had always kept him grounded, begged him to listen, to consider the offer. His sister's hand rested in his, small and warm, a silent plea for comfort.
She still didn't understand.
She didn't see the shadows lurking just outside their reach, the dangers that threatened to swallow them whole. But he did. He had seen too much, felt too much. He had grown up too fast. "Please," the boy whispered, his voice barely audible. He didn't want to say the words, didn't want to admit the vulnerability he felt, but the desperation in his chest overpowered everything else. "Please, we need help." The stranger's head tilted, as if trying to read him, to understand him. For a long, painful moment, there was nothing but silence between them, broken only by the distant hum of the car's engine. The boy's stomach twisted into knots, the fear gnawing at him. Could he really trust this person? Could they offer something, anything, that would help them escape this nightmare? The stranger opened the door, stepping out slowly, cautiously. The boy instinctively pulled his sister closer, shielding her with his body, though he knew it would do little to protect them from the world outside. The figure was tall, but the boy couldn't make out their features in the darkness. All he saw were the faint outlines of a jacket, the outline of a person that seemed far too calm, too collected for the situation at hand. "I'm not here to hurt you," the stranger said, their voice soft but firm. "I'm just here to help." The boy stared at them, uncertain, still unsure of the motives behind those words. They meant nothing. Help meant nothing anymore. He had heard that word before, from his father, from people who promised safety and never delivered. But the stranger continued, their voice almost pleading now, as though sensing the boy's hesitation. "I've seen what you've been through. I know what it feels like to be alone, to have nothing. I know what it's like to feel like the world has turned its back on you." The boy felt his breath hitch. Those words, they weren't just words. They carried weight. They carried truth. The boy's eyes flickered with something close to hope, though he quickly pushed it back. He couldn't afford hope. Hope had broken him before. The stranger took a slow step forward, the gravel beneath their shoes crunching softly. "I'm not asking for anything in return," they said, their voice gentle but filled with a quiet intensity. "I just want to help you get out of here, to get somewhere safe. A place where you can breathe, where you can heal." The boy's mind raced. The idea of safety, of shelter, was so foreign to him now that it almost felt like a dream. He had forgotten what it felt like to not be afraid, to not have to constantly watch his back. The thought of a place where he and his sister could rest, could sleep without fear, seemed almost impossible. But as the stranger stepped closer, the boy felt something inside him stir. He didn't want to believe it, but there was something about this person that felt different. Their eyes, when they finally looked directly at him, were not cold or calculating. They were warm, kind, understanding. His sister shifted in his arms, her small hand tightening around his sleeve, and the boy glanced down at her. Her wide eyes stared up at him, searching for answers, searching for reassurance. He couldn't lie to her anymore. He couldn't keep pretending that everything would be okay when he had no idea how to make it okay. The boy swallowed hard, his voice trembling as he spoke again, barely more than a whisper. "Will you really help us?" The stranger nodded, their expression softening.
"Yes.
"I will. I'll take you somewhere where you can rest, where you won't have to worry anymore." The boy stared at them, his chest tight with the weight of the decision he had to make. He didn't trust easily. He couldn't. But he also knew that they couldn't stay here, not on this cold, empty street, with nowhere to go and no one to turn to. He glanced at his sister again, her innocent face filled with trust, and the weight of that trust crushed him. She was so small, so fragile. He had to protect her. With a shaky breath, the boy finally nodded. "Okay, we'll go with you." The stranger offered him a gentle smile, and without another word, they turned and motioned for them to follow. The boy hesitated for only a moment before he took a step forward, leading his sister into the unknown. But as they walked, the boy couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a new chapter of their lives, one filled with uncertainty, but also with the faintest spark of hope. And maybe, just maybe, that was all they needed to survive. They moved forward, into the night, toward the promise of something better. The night seemed to stretch out endlessly as they followed the stranger, each step heavy with uncertainty. The boy's heart hammered in his chest as he clutched his sister's hand tighter. She walked beside him, her small fingers gripping his sleeve, still too tired to fully understand the gravity of what was happening, but there was a quiet sense of trust in her eyes. She was still holding on to the illusion that everything would be okay, that this stranger was something good, someone who would protect them. But the boy knew better. He couldn't afford to let his guard down, not even for a second. His world had been shattered too many times, and he wasn't about to let anyone break his heart again. The stranger led them down a dimly lit side street, the faint glow from the streetlights casting long shadows on the pavement. The sounds of the city, once bustling with life, now felt distant, almost unreal. The boy could hear the soft crunch of their footsteps as they walked, the sound of his breath quickening with each passing second. Every fiber of his being screamed to stay alert, to be ready for anything. But there was something in the air, something about the stranger's presence that made him hesitate, made him want to believe that this time, maybe, just maybe, things could be different. As they walked further away from the bus stop, the boy couldn't shake the feeling that they were heading towards something inevitable. Something they couldn't control. The world had been cruel enough to them, and now, this stranger, a figure so unfamiliar, so distant, was the only one standing between them and the abyss of uncertainty. "Are you okay?" The stranger's voice broke the silence, soft yet filled with an understanding that the boy didn't know how to process. "You've been through a lot." The boy's throat tightened. The words stung, cutting through the fragile wall he had built around himself. He wanted to say something, something angry, something sharp, something to tell the stranger that they didn't understand. But he couldn't find the words. His voice felt lost, buried under the weight of his own fear and sorrow. Instead, he simply nodded, his gaze focused straight ahead. They came to a narrow alleyway, barely wide enough for them to walk side by side. The air felt colder here, the walls of the buildings closing in on them like the walls of a cage. The boy's anxiety spiked. He could feel it, an oppressive weight hanging over him. His eyes darted to the end of the alley, to the darkened street that stretched beyond it. The unknown. The stranger paused at the entrance, glancing over his shoulder at them. His eyes were kind, but there was something unreadable in his expression, something that made the boy's stomach twist. There was an intensity to the stranger's gaze, something deep that made the boy wonder if he had any idea what it was like to feel utterly alone, to be abandoned by the one person who was supposed to protect you. "Just a little farther," the stranger said, his voice low. "I promise you'll be safe." The boy hesitated. He glanced down at his sister, whose tired eyes were already half closed, her head resting against his arm. She looked so innocent, so trusting. She didn't know the dangers that lingered in the world. She didn't know what it was like to lose everything, to have your world come crashing down around you. But soon she would.
Soon she would understand.
His chest tightened with the thought. The stranger led them into a small, dimly lit courtyard, surrounded by tall, crumbling buildings. It felt like an abandoned world, a place untouched by the noise and chaos of the city outside. The air was thick with dust, the ground uneven beneath their feet. The boy looked around, his instincts screaming that something was off, that they shouldn't be here. But there was no turning back now. They had come too far. The stranger stopped in the middle of the courtyard and turned to face them. "This is it," he said softly, as if testing the air. "It's not much, but it's a place where you can rest, where you can find some peace." The boy didn't move. His heart was racing again, his eyes flicking to the windows of the nearby buildings. Were they being watched? Was this a trap? His breath quickened as his mind ran through every possible scenario. But the stranger didn't seem threatening. There was something in his eyes, something that made the boy feel like maybe, just maybe, they had found a small sliver of hope in the darkness. But hope had been a dangerous thing for him. Every time he had dared to hope, the world had taken it from him. "What is this place?" the boy asked, his voice low and wary. "Why are you helping us?" The stranger's gaze softened. "It's not about helping you. It's about giving you a chance. You've been through hell. I can see it in your eyes. I've been there, too. I know what it's like to have everything slip through your fingers." The boy's mind raced, but he remained silent. The stranger's words were unsettling, too familiar. It felt like they had been waiting for him to say them, waiting for him to reveal something he had buried deep inside. But he couldn't. He wouldn't. "We don't need pity," the boy said quietly, trying to push the stranger's words away. "We just need a way out of this." The stranger nodded, understanding flickering in his eyes. "I get it. I do." His voice softened, and for a moment, the boy saw something raw and real, in the stranger's face. He wasn't just some faceless figure. He had his own scars, his own story. But sometimes, The way out isn't about running, the stranger continued. It's about facing what's happened and finding a way to move forward. The boy didn't know how to respond. The weight of his words hung in the air, suffocating him. Facing what had happened? He had spent so long trying to forget, trying to bury it all. The anger, the pain, the emptiness of being left behind. He couldn't face it.
He didn't know how.
The stranger's gaze never wavered. You'll find your way, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. It's all part of the journey. You're not alone anymore. You don't have to carry it all on your own. The boy wanted to shout. He wanted to tell the stranger that he didn't understand, that it wasn't that simple, that there was no easy way out. But instead, he just stood there, feeling the weight of his sister's hand in his, feeling the silence around them like a living thing pressing in on them. The stranger stepped back, giving them space. I'll be here if you need me, but for now you can rest. Take a moment. You've earned it. The boy looked at him, unsure of whether to trust the offer. But deep down, a small part of him, buried beneath the layers of fear and doubt, wanted to believe. Wanted to believe that there could be something good in this world, that there could be some light in the darkness. He turned toward the small, crumbling building in front of them, his sister still nestled against his side, her eyes closed, her breath even. He felt her trust in him, felt the weight of her small body against his. For a moment, he let himself hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a place here to heal. A place to start over. Maybe this could be the beginning of something different. And as they stepped into the dimly lit building, the boy finally allowed himself to take a deep breath, as if he were letting go of a burden he had been carrying for too long. But deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. And whatever came next, they would face it together. The door creaked as they entered the small, dimly lit building. The boy's heart raced, the tension in his chest thickening with every step. His sister was still nestled against his side, her small form limp from exhaustion, her breathing shallow and soft. She had no idea what they were walking into. She had no idea of the dangers that still lingered in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. The stranger had led them into a narrow hallway, the walls cracked and weathered, the air heavy with the scent of mildew and dust. The faint hum of the city outside seemed so far away now, as if the world beyond this place had forgotten them. But the boy knew better. He knew the world hadn't forgotten them. It had just turned its back. They passed through a few more rooms, each one darker than the last, until they came to a small, bare room. A single, thin mattress lay on the floor, a dusty pillow resting against the wall. The boy's eyes flickered to the corner, where a small table sat, covered with old newspapers and scraps of fabric. There was nothing in here but the barest necessities, nothing that could make them feel safe or comforted. He glanced around, his mind racing. Was this really a safe place? Or was this just another trap? He couldn't trust anyone, not after everything that had happened. But for his sister's sake, for her safety, he had to keep going. He had no choice. He couldn't afford to second-guess himself. The stranger, who had been walking quietly ahead, stopped and turned to face them. "This is the best I can offer you for now," he said, his voice soft. "It's not much, but it's a start. You can rest here, sleep for a while, and when you wake, we'll figure out what to do next." The boy nodded slowly, but his mind was elsewhere. He didn't know if he could trust this man. He didn't know if this was the right place for them to be. But he had promised himself he would keep his sister safe, no matter what. And right now, this was the only option they had. He sat down on the mattress, feeling the coolness of the floor seep through the thin fabric of his jeans. His sister lay down beside him, curling up into a ball, her head resting on the pillow. She didn't ask questions. She never did. She trusted him, and that trust was a weight he wasn't sure he could bear. The room was eerily quiet. The only sounds were the soft breathing of his sister and the distant hum of the city outside. The boy stared at the cracked walls, feeling the silence press down on him, suffocating him. He didn't know how long they could stay here, how long they could survive in this place. It wasn't home. It wasn't even close. But it was all they had. He reached over and brushed a lock of his sister's hair out of her face, his fingers trembling slightly. She was so innocent, so unaware of the danger that still loomed around them. She didn't know how fragile their lives had become, how easily everything could be taken from them. And yet, she trusted him. She believed in him. She didn't see the brokenness inside him, the fear, the doubt. All she saw was the boy who had promised to protect her. The boy's chest tightened, the weight of responsibility threatening to crush him. He wasn't sure how much longer he could keep pretending that everything would be okay. The world had taken so much from them already. How much more could they lose? He stared down at his hands, the calluses on his palms a reminder of everything he had done to survive. He had worked so hard, fought so hard, just to keep them both alive. But it never seemed enough. They always seemed to be just one step away from falling into the abyss. A faint knock at the door broke the silence. The boy froze, his heart leaping into his throat. His eyes snapped to the door, his body tensing.
Who could it be?
Was it someone coming to hurt them? Someone looking for them? He quickly stood up, his mind racing. His sister stirred, but didn't wake. She was so tired, so vulnerable. Another knock. Louder this time. The boy's breath caught in his throat as the door slowly creaked open. The stranger stood there, his face partially obscured by the shadows. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, his hand resting on the doorframe. The boy didn't move. He couldn't. The world felt like it was closing in around him. He didn't trust this man. He didn't trust anything anymore. Is everything okay? The stranger finally asked, his voice a little too calm. The boy hesitated. Why are you here? He demanded, his voice tight with fear. He didn't want to show weakness, not now. But the fear was choking him, and his thoughts were running wild. What do you want? The stranger's expression remained unreadable. I just wanted to make sure you're safe. You're not alone here. If you need anything, I'm just outside. The boy's eyes narrowed. I don't need anything from you. The stranger didn't seem offended. He simply nodded, his eyes flicking toward the boy's sister, who was still lying on the mattress, her small form barely moving. Rest now, the stranger said quietly, his voice almost soothing. You've been through a lot. You don't have to carry it alone anymore. The boy stood frozen, unsure of what to do, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. He wanted to shout, to demand answers. But something in the stranger's eyes made him hesitate. Something about the way he spoke. He wasn't sure whether the stranger was genuinely trying to help them, or if this was just another cruel game of fate, another attempt to bring them closer to the edge. He wasn't sure what to believe anymore. But for his sister's sake, he couldn't afford to ignore the possibility that this might be their only chance. He had to take it. For her. With a shaky breath, the boy finally nodded. Fine, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But if anything happens, the stranger held up his hands, his face still shrouded in the dim light. Nothing will happen. I won't let anything happen to you. The door closed softly behind him, and the boy exhaled, his heart still racing. He turned back to his sister, whose face was still peaceful, her breathing even. She had no idea what kind of world they were in. She had no idea how fragile their existence was, how quickly it could all fall apart. But the boy knew. He knew all too well. And that knowledge weighed on him, a burden that was almost too heavy to bear. He sat back down on the mattress, his eyes never leaving his sister's face. His mind spun with thoughts of their future, of the uncertainty that lay ahead. They couldn't stay here forever. They couldn't live in fear, in the shadows of a broken world. But for now, this was their reality. And all he could do was hold on to the small, fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, they would survive this. He gently pulled the blanket over his sister, tucking it around her small form. He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to push the fear away, to find some semblance of peace in the chaos. But deep inside, he knew that their journey was far from over. They had a long road ahead of them, and whatever came next, he would face it head-on. For her. And he would never let go. As the days passed, the boy and his sister found a fragile peace within the walls of the small, dimly lit room. The stranger, true to his word, kept his distance, offering them quiet shelter and the occasional soft-spoken reassurance. The boy had never imagined that such simplicity, a roof over their heads, a bed to sleep in, even a meal, could feel like such an overwhelming gift. But with each passing night, the boy felt the weight of their survival pressing harder against him. He couldn't help but wonder if this was all just an illusion, a brief moment of reprieve before the world came crashing down again. The truth lingered in the back of his mind. They had nowhere else to go. No home. No family to return to. They were drifting in an ocean of uncertainty, with only each other to cling to. His sister, though, still held on to the belief that everything would be fine. She would smile, her small face lighting up with hope as she whispered, "We're safe now, right, big brother?" The boy would nod, forcing a smile, even though he knew the road ahead wasn't that simple. He wished he could tell her that everything would be perfect, that they would build a new life here, that nothing could ever hurt them again. But deep down, he knew that the world was unpredictable and safety was fleeting. One evening, as the sky outside grew dark and the streets below hummed with the sound of distant cars, the boy sat on the edge of the mattress, watching his sister sleep. The quiet rhythm of her breathing soothed him, grounding him in a world that felt so foreign to him now. His thoughts drifted to his father, the man who had promised to protect them, to keep them safe, and how he had vanished without a trace. His chest tightened at the memory. It had been a wound that hadn't fully healed, and it was only now, in the silence of this small room, that the pain truly felt raw again. He realized, for the first time, how much he had been holding in. He had to be strong for his sister, for her sake. He couldn't afford to show her the depth of his own hurt. But tonight, he allowed himself a moment of weakness. He sat there, letting the tears fall freely, feeling the weight of everything, the anger, the loss, the fear, crushing him all at once. He had carried this burden for so long, alone, and now, in the quiet of this forgotten space, he finally allowed himself to grieve. It was then that the stranger appeared in the doorway, his silhouette a shadow against the dim light from the hallway. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, watching the boy silently. After a long moment, the stranger stepped forward, his voice softer than the boy had ever heard it. "You don't have to do this alone," he said, his words carrying an unspoken understanding that seemed to reach deep into the boy's soul. The boy wiped his eyes quickly, ashamed of his tears. "I'm just trying to protect her," he muttered, his voice hoarse. "I don't know what to do anymore." The stranger walked closer, placing a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "You've done more than enough," he said quietly. "You've given her everything. And you've kept going, even when everything seemed hopeless." The boy didn't know how to respond. It felt like the stranger saw through him, saw everything he had been hiding. For the first time, the boy felt like someone else understood. "You don't have to carry this burden on your own," the stranger continued. "You've made it this far. And no matter what happens, you're not alone anymore." The boy's breath caught in his throat as he looked up at the stranger. There was a quiet strength in the man's eyes, something that told the boy that there was still hope, even in the darkest of times. It wasn't a promise of an easy life, but it was a promise of something worth fighting for. The boy looked back at his sister, sleeping soundly beside him. For her, he would continue. He would fight for her, protect her, no matter what the future held. As the night stretched on, the boy lay down beside his sister, pulling the blanket up over them both. He had no answers, no guarantees, but in that moment, he knew that they would face whatever came next together. And in the stillness of the room, with the stranger's words echoing in his mind, the boy found a glimmer of peace, something he hadn't felt in so long. Maybe this was the beginning of something better. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for them to rebuild, to find a place in the world where they could belong. But as he closed his eyes, a thought lingered in the back of his mind. There was still so much ahead of them. The road would be long, filled with twists and turns, and nothing would ever be the same. But one thing was certain: they would survive. And if you, like the boy, find hope in the darkest of times, if you believe in the power of resilience, love, and the strength that lies within each of us, then make sure you never miss a moment of this journey. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because this story, their story, and the stories that follow, are just beginning. Join us and be a part of the journey that will leave you inspired, heartbroken, and stronger than ever. Subscribe now, and let's continue to find hope together.